Desire is seldom spoken in words. It reveals itself quietly, like fire beneath ash, waiting for the discerning eye. To the untrained, these signs pass unnoticed, but to one who governs himself, they are read with calm precision. She will not announce her longing. She will not clamor for your attention. Instead, the body becomes a scroll, and her gestures the ink. The gaze that lingers too long, the breath that deepens in your presence, the subtle lean of her frame closer than necessity demands. These are not accidents. They are signals, silent yet resolute. The wise man does not rush upon them like a starving beast. He observes, he confirms, he honors the boundary between perception and presumption, for to misread is folly, to assume is arrogance. But when clarity is certain, when the signs align like stars that cannot be denied, then he acts, not from desperation, but from sovereignty. Lust is no enemy, nor is it a master. It is a force to be understood, to be answered only with intention. He who can read desire without being enslaved by it is free. He who is free can give and receive without losing his ground. Thus, the signs are not a call to frenzy, but an invitation to presence, to see what is, to act when it is right, and to remain unmoved when it is not. That is the way. Desire whispers, it does not shout. Train the eye to perceive the silent signs. Desire does not always come wrapped in words. Rarely does it step forward in bold declaration. More often, it moves like a shadow, quiet, subtle, cloaked in modest gestures and fleeting expressions. To those who live distracted, this whisper is invisible. They demand noise, proclamation, spectacle, and so the signs pass them by, and they remain ignorant of the forces moving in their midst. But to the disciplined, to the one who has trained the mind to stillness and the senses to attentiveness, these whispers speak clearly. There is a distinction here that must be honored. The world is full of noise, but truth often speaks softly. This is not only the way of desire, but the way of nature itself. The dawn does not announce itself with thunder, it breaks with quiet light. The seasons do not cry out when they change, they shift in silence, leaf by leaf, wind by wind. So too with desire it rarely bursts forth in a storm. It stirs like the tide, drawing closer in measured, almost imperceptible waves. The untrained eye seeks drama and overlooks subtlety. It chases after grand gestures and misses the quiet ones. It imagines that desire must declare itself loudly, and so it fails to see the truth standing silently before it. This blindness is the result of impatience. Impatience demands immediacy, demands proof, demands spectacle. But wisdom waits. Wisdom watches. Wisdom does not force the moment to speak louder than it naturally does. Thus, to perceive the silent signs is not merely a matter of cleverness. It is a discipline of attention. It requires the eye that sees without distortion, the ear that hears beneath the clamor of its own expectations. This discipline begins within. For how can one perceive another's signals if one has not subdued the noise within oneself? The restless mind invents signals where there are none, while the anxious spirit projects meaning upon the meaningless. Only a mind at rest can distinguish the real whisper of desire from the echoes of its own longing. To train the eye, one must first train the self, sit with stillness, observe without judgment, learn to be content with waiting. In this waiting, clarity arises. What was once hidden begins to appear, not because it was absent, but because your vision was clouded. In the same way that the stars cannot be seen under the blaze of the sun, the signs of desire cannot be recognized under the glare of your own impatience. Quiet the sun within, and the stars without become visible. Consider, if desire shouted, would there be any need for discernment? If it declared itself plainly at every turn, wisdom would be unnecessary. Yet nature conceals much of its truth behind veils, and only those willing to look beyond the obvious can see. The silent signs are a test. Are you patient enough, disciplined enough, to perceive what is not immediately given? Or will you rush blindly, imagining signals where none exist, deceiving yourself with the fabrications of your own hunger? Understand this: desire has dignity. It does not cheapen itself by demanding attention. It offers subtle hints, expecting the worthy to recognize them. To miss them is to lack refinement. To mistake them is to lack discipline. But to see them clearly, with patience and composure, is to prove oneself attentive not only to the other, but to life itself. Therefore, let your training be constant. Observe not only people, but the world. Notice how the wind bends the trees without sound, how the sun warms the skin without flame, how affection is shown more in a soft glance than in 1,000 words. By aligning yourself with nature's quiet patterns, you learn to read the patterns of desire as well. And when the whisper comes, you will not be shaken. You will not pounce upon it in frenzy, nor dismiss it in ignorance. You will acknowledge it as you acknowledge the shift of seasons, calmly, with reverence, with understanding. Desire is a whisper. To hear it, quiet yourself. To perceive it, discipline yourself. To respond to it, govern yourself. Thus the wise do not demand noise. They listen for silence, for it is in silence that the deepest truths are spoken. A lingering gaze, a leaning frame, or deepened breath often speaks louder than words. The body is an honest messenger. Words may falter, may conceal, may bend to the will of caution or fear, but the body rarely lies. It reveals in movement what the tongue refuses to say. It speaks in the stillness of a gaze, in the weight of a posture, in the rhythm of breath. To the inattentive, these signs are invisible. To the impatient, they are disregarded. But to one who watches with calm discipline, they speak with a language as clear as any proclamation. A lingering gaze, what does it reveal? It is more than a look. It is a tether of attention. Most eyes roam restless, grazing the surface of their surroundings without pause. Yet, when desire takes hold, the gaze lingers longer than necessity requires. It returns again and again, even when reason bids it turn away. To meet such a gaze is to feel its gravity, subtle yet undeniable. The eyes, in their stillness, declare what the lips conceal. A leaning frame speaks likewise. The body is drawn forward, pulled closer by an invisible thread. Though the mind may counsel restraint, the body betrays its truth. It narrows the distance, not in leaps, but in quiet adjustments. A shoulder turned, a step nearer, a posture inclined. These movements are not calculated. They arise naturally, as a plant turns toward the sun without instruction. Desire draws the body forward, and the observant eye perceives the shift. And then the breath. Breath is the rhythm of the inner world made audible. Calmness breathes evenly, but desire disturbs the balance. The breath deepens, quickens, becomes charged with presence. It may falter in your nearness or rise when the air grows heavy between two souls. This change is often slight, unnoticed by most, yet it is a sign as sure as any spoken word. The body announces even when the voice remains silent. Why dwell upon these signs? Because in them lies truth unclouded by artifice. Words may flatter, may deceive, may retreat into ambiguity, but the gaze, the posture, the breath, these are born of instinct, not of calculation. They are the pulse of the moment, unfiltered and unmasked. To perceive them is not to intrude, but to attune. to align one's awareness with the reality that is already unfolding. Still, one must guard against imagination. The undisciplined mind invents meaning where none exists. It sees a casual glance and calls it longing. It sees a friendly nearness and mistakes it for intimacy. Such folly arises not from the signs themselves, but from the hunger within the observer. Hunger distorts perception. Only the one who stands sovereign over his own desire can see another's clearly. Thus, when you notice a lingering gaze, ask, is it truly anchored upon you, or merely passing through you toward another thought? When you observe a leaning frame, ask, is it born of attraction, or simply the circumstance of space? When you hear the deepened breath, ask, is it stirred by desire, or by fatigue, or by thought unspoken? Discernment is not assumption. To interpret rightly is the task of patience. Yet when the signs converge, when the gaze lingers beyond chance, when the body leans without reason, when the breath deepens in rhythm with your presence, then the truth becomes difficult to deny. At such moments, clarity dawns not in words but in awareness. You need not demand confession, nor force the unspoken into sound. The body has already spoken. What then is the way of wisdom? To recognize without arrogance, to perceive without conquest, to acknowledge the sign as one acknowledges the turning of a leaf in autumn, not with grasping, but with reverence. For the signs are not given to feed the ego, they are revelations of nature's current. They ask not for boast, but for balance. Remember always, what is revealed can be misused. Many, upon perceiving such signs, lose themselves in greed, rushing to seize what they believe is theirs by right. Yet the Stoic does not rush. The Stoic does not seize. The Stoic observes, waits, confirms, and acts only when the moment is just. For it is not the presence of signs that grants permission, but the alignment of signs with virtue and intention. The body speaks loudly in silence. A gaze, a posture, a breath, each is a syllable in the language of desire. To hear this language, you need not ears sharpened by greed, but eyes trained in stillness, and a mind unclouded by longing. Thus, what others miss, you will perceive. What others distort, you will see as it is. And in seeing, you will know. The truth is written not in sound, but in silence. Do not confuse imagination with evidence. Clarity must precede action. The mind is a restless painter. It sketches images on the canvas of reality, not always with truth, but often with desire, fear, or vanity as its brush. What is imagined appears vivid, convincing, and near, yet it is no more than a shadow of thought. To live enslaved to imagination is to be tossed by illusions, to walk paths that lead to emptiness. Thus, one must distinguish between what is truly seen and what is merely projected. Without this discipline, every sign becomes a mirage, every gesture a confirmation of longing, every silence an echo of what the mind itself has whispered. Clarity is the measure of truth. It is that state in which perception is not colored by hunger, not bent by impatience, not blinded by vanity. Just as muddy water cannot reflect the sky, a clouded mind cannot perceive reality. And yet, how often do people act not on evidence, but on assumption? They rush toward illusions, convinced they have discovered signals of desire, when in fact they have seen only the reflection of their own yearning. The Stoic way demands patience. Evidence must be confirmed, not conjured. A single glance may stir hope, but is it enough? A leaning body may awaken suspicion, but is it certain? One sign may be chance, two may be coincidence. Only when the harmony of signals aligns beyond doubt does clarity approach. And even then, The wise withhold judgment until the truth reveals itself fully, for it is far better to act late with certainty than early with error. Consider the cost of mistaking imagination for evidence. To act upon illusion is to betray trust, to strain bonds, to expose the self to shame. What was thought a sign of desire may, in fact, have been nothing more than courtesy, fatigue, or distraction. What was believed to be invitation may have been indifference. The consequence is not merely disappointment, but the loss of dignity. The one who acts without clarity becomes reckless, governed not by reason, but by impulse. In contrast, the one who waits, who demands clarity before action, moves with strength. His restraint is not weakness but sovereignty. He does not allow imagination to command him. He commands imagination. He observes the signs. He weighs them. He asks again and again, is this truth, or is this my desire speaking in disguise? Only when the answer resounds clearly, stripped of illusion, does he step forward. This is the discipline of clarity. Clarity is not given freely. It must be earned. It requires the courage to doubt your own thoughts, the humility to question your own certainty. It requires the practice of pausing, of letting time reveal what haste would conceal. Truth, like a seed, unfolds with time. Pull at it too early, and you find nothing. Let it grow, and its form is undeniable. One must also recognize the danger of over-imagination. The mind, once given a hint, often builds a castle around it. From a single look it weaves a story, from a casual word it constructs a promise. Yet none of this is real. The wise learn to stop the mind at the threshold. This is only one sign. It may mean nothing. By cutting illusion at its root, one guards against error, and yet clarity is not passivity. To wait for evidence is not to drift endlessly in doubt. It is to sharpen the senses, to stay awake, to gather patiently until truth becomes undeniable. Then, and only then, action arises, not as a guess, but as a certainty. Such action is firm, grounded, unshaken by regret. For when one acts in clarity, one does not look back. Remember, the difference between wisdom and folly is not the presence of signs, but the response to them. The fool sees a shadow and leaps. The wise see the same shadow and wait for the light to confirm its form. The fool acts first and doubts later. The wise doubt first and act later. Which of these paths preserves dignity? Which brings peace rather than regret? The answer is clear. Therefore, let this be your discipline. Do not mistake imagination for evidence. Let every perception be tested. Let every sign be questioned. Let clarity stand before action, as the sun rises before the day begins. For without clarity, action is blindness. With clarity, action becomes strength. Respond from composure, never from hunger. Sovereignty is strength. When desire stirs, the body heats, the heart quickens, and the mind imagines. These waves rise swiftly, seeking to carry the self away into unmeasured action. Yet here lies the great trial. Shall you be governed by the hunger within, or shall you govern it? For hunger does not think, it only demands. Hunger presses for immediacy, for grasping, for possession. But composure stands as a citadel. It feels the same fire, yet does not burn. It acknowledges the wave, yet remains anchored to the shore. Consider the difference between the one who acts from hunger and the one who acts from composure. The hungry is restless. He leaps at the first sign, mistaking possibility for certainty. He consumes without reflection, thinking only of his craving. In doing so, he loses control not only over the situation but over himself. His actions betray desperation, and desperation is never strength. It is weakness laid bare. The composed, by contrast, responds with measure. He too feels desire, but he does not rush to obey it. He allows the fire to warm him, not to consume him. He weighs the moment, asks what is true, what is fitting, what is wise. He does not confuse urgency with necessity. He acts, but only when it is time, and when he acts, he does so without trembling. His restraint gives weight to his presence. His calm becomes its own form of power. Sovereignty is strength, and sovereignty begins within. To be sovereign is to be master over the inner kingdom, the impulses, the cravings, the storms of passion. Many imagine sovereignty as dominion over others, but what dominion is greater than over the self? For if you cannot govern your own hunger, you are already enslaved. No chains are heavier than those you place upon yourself by bowing to desire unexamined. The Stoics teach, nothing truly belongs to you except your reasoned choice. Fortune may take wealth, reputation, even life, but your governance of your own soul is yours alone. In desire, this teaching becomes clear. You cannot always command the signs you see, nor the sparks they awaken in you. But you can command your response, and in that choice, whether to rush like the hungry or to stand firm like the composed, your strength is proven. Do not mistake composure for coldness. It is not indifference, nor is it denial of desire. It is acknowledgement without enslavement. The composed do not suppress longing. They see it, feel it, honor it as a part of nature, but they do not kneel to it. They treat it as they would treat fire in a hearth, useful when contained, destructive when unleashed without care. Hunger, on the other hand, is blind. It wants only to be filled, no matter the cost. Hunger devours without measure, leaving regret in its wake. The hungry one says, I could not help myself. The sovereign one says, I chose. And between those two statements lies the measure of a life, one ruled by compulsion, the other by reason. What then does composure look like in practice? It is the pause before response. It is the breath taken to steady the mind before words are spoken. It is the patience to confirm what is real before committing to action. It is the refusal to be hurried by urgency that is not necessity. Composure does not strip away desire, it clarifies it. It ensures that when you act not as a slave to impulse, but as a master of yourself. Remember, hunger weakens even when it is satisfied. For the hungry one, no satisfaction lasts. Each fulfillment leads to another craving, deeper, more frantic. But composure brings enduring strength, for it anchors desire within reason. To respond from composure is to remain whole. To respond from hunger is to scatter oneself into fragments. Therefore, train yourself daily. When desire rises, do not fear it, and do not obey it blindly. Stand in the center of yourself, like a tree rooted against the wind. Feel the gust, but do not be carried away. Act if it is right. Refrain if it is not. In either case, act from sovereignty, not servitude. For sovereignty is strength, and strength is freedom. Lust is neither enemy nor master. It is a force to be understood and met with intention. Among the impulses of human nature, lust has long been feared by some, worshipped by others, and misunderstood by most. Some call it an enemy, a fire to be extinguished lest it consume. Others treat it as a master, kneeling to its every demand, allowing it to dictate choice and direction. But both extremes are errors. Lust is neither to be slain nor obeyed. It is to be understood, for in understanding one finds the power to meet it with intention, neither as a slave nor as a destroyer, but as a sovereign partner in dialogue with the forces of nature. Lust is not evil. It is as natural as hunger, as instinctive as thirst. It is the body's way of pointing toward connection, creation, continuation. It stirs the blood, quickens the senses, focuses attention. To deny its existence is to deny part of life itself, just as foolish as denying the need for food or the reality of death. Yet, to exalt it as ruler is equally misguided, for when lust becomes master, it blinds reason, weakens judgment, and enslaves the soul to fleeting impulses. The wise stance, therefore, is balance. See lust for what it is, a force, a current, neither good nor bad in itself. A river can nourish fields or flood them. Fire can warm the home or burn it to ash. The moral weight lies not in the force itself, but in how it is met, directed, and governed. Lust, like any other natural impulse, must be placed under the guidance of intention. What does it mean to meet lust with intention? It means not running from it in shame, nor collapsing before it in desperation. It means pausing long enough to ask, what is this desire asking of me? What is its purpose? What are the consequences if I obey? And what are the consequences if I refrain? To act without asking is slavery. To ask without acting is avoidance. To ask and then act with clarity, that is mastery. Understand that lust is not an intruder, it is part of your being. To treat it as an enemy is to create division within yourself, to wage war against your own nature. The Stoics did not teach self-hatred, they taught self-mastery. Mastery does not come through suppression, but through recognition and order. When lust arises, greet it as you would greet any guest. Acknowledge its presence, hear its voice, but do not surrender your house to it. Offer it a seat, not the throne. At the same time, beware of treating lust as a king, for kings demand tribute, and lust as master extracts a heavy toll. The one who serves lust without question grows weaker with each surrender, for his will becomes soft, his reason clouded, his dignity eroded. He becomes not a human directing his instincts, but an instinct masquerading as a human. To live in such a way is not freedom, but bondage, however sweet the chains may feel in the moment. The path of wisdom is narrow, yet clear. Hold lust as you would hold a sword, firmly, respectfully, with awareness of its danger and its usefulness. Mishandled, it wounds. Guided with care, it protects, it strengthens, it serves. The sword is not the master of the warrior is the master of the sword. Likewise, lust is not to rule you, but to be ruled by you. Ask yourself, how does this force align with my values, my purpose, my reason? If lust seeks only indulgence, without regard to virtue, let it pass like a storm that is observed but not followed. If lust can be expressed in harmony with truth, respect, and dignity, then let it be answered, not as an act of desperation, but as an act of intention. In this way, desire is not your downfall but your companion, no longer a tyrant but a servant of your higher self. So let this be your remembrance. Lust is neither enemy nor master. It is a force, like wind or flame, to be guided with care. To fight it blindly is folly, to serve it blindly is ruin, but to understand it, to meet it with the composure of reason and the steadiness of intention, that is the way of sovereignty, that is the way of strength. Desire is not chaos unless you let it be. The world whispers its truths quietly, and only the disciplined ear can hear them. Signs appear, gazes that linger, bodies that lean, breaths that quicken. But these are not commands, they are invitations to awareness. They are not guarantees of destiny, but signals to be weighed with patience, to be tested against clarity. The wise do not surrender to imagination. They do not rush upon illusions, nor act from hunger. They stand rooted, composed, sovereign. They govern themselves before attempting to enter the domain of another's longing. For strength is not found in the frantic grasp, but in the steady hand that chooses when and whether to reach. Lust itself is not to be feared nor worshipped. It is a current in the river of life, powerful but neutral, waiting to be directed by reason. The one who sees it as enemy fights in vain against himself. The one who serves it as master loses his crown and becomes a servant to impulse. But the one who meets it with intention walks the middle path, neither slave nor suppressor, but sovereign of his own being. Thus the way is clear. Perceive the whispers without forcing them into shouts. Distinguish evidence from imagination. Guard your responses with composure. Hold lust as a force, neither master nor foe, but a servant of reason when guided rightly. To live so is to be free, not from desire, but from its tyranny. And in freedom, one can meet desire without fear, without frenzy, and without loss of self. This is not merely the art of decoding another's signals. It is the deeper art of governing one's own soul.